For those of you just joining, we were just going to wait a couple more minutes to see if everyone can join. But while we're waiting, I wanted to encourage everyone to keep their videos on if they feel comfortable. And also feel free to use the chat feature as much as you want. I really want this session to be as collaborative as possible, and I'd love to hear where everyone is in their job finding process in data science and what their questions are. Okay, awesome. Looks like we're kind of evening out at 40 participants, so this looks like a good crew, and I think we'll get started. For those of you who don't know, my name is Isha Mehra, and I currently work as a data scientist in Facebook at Seattle. And I graduated from Carnegie Mellon 2 years ago, where I studied statistics and machine learning. And this job at Facebook wasn't my first data science position. I also interned at Microsoft as a data science intern summer of 2017. And that was my first real official data scientist position. So I really want this talk to be focused on the introduction to getting a job in data science. And the biggest thing I want to start off with is that data science is defined very, very differently at every company you talk to. It's actually really confusing and overwhelming. And I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what even data science means at companies. But the experience I have has been more in product analytics. So I think that there's data scientists who work more as data engineers who actually work on getting data to the right people. And there's data scientists who work with interpreting the data once it arrives. And I usually work more with interpreting it once it arrives. So before I keep talking, before I keep talking anymore, I really would love to hear from some of you. If a couple people would feel brave enough to unmute themselves and speak, tell me, introduce yourselves, tell me where you are in your data science job process, and if there's anything top of mind that you hope that we go over today.
Hi, I'll go first. My name is Amrina, and I'm currently doing PhD in data science at Boise State University, Idaho State. And yeah, I just finished my 2 years and 2 more years to go. That's it. Nice to meet you all.
Awesome.
I can go next if that's okay.
Yeah, I guess. I'm sorry. Are you going? Or I can go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay. My name is Kashal. I go to Texas A&M University. So I'm working on my PhD, but I feel like I have a bit of an unconventional route, which is why I kind of wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this. I am working on a PhD in neuroscience, but I do a lot of big data analysis through electrophysiology, so it's continuous neural signals, and we're really transitioning to a point where machine learning is actually becoming central to my research and dissertation. I have 2 more years left. I just reached candidacy, and so I don't have a mathematics or computer science background, but I'm using data science. I'm learning Python. I've done so over the last year or 2. I'm also pretty good at, I've also improved my skills with MATLAB. So, where would someone like me sort of fit in? And maybe there's others who are kind of similar where they don't have this type of background. But, data science is what has interested me almost more than neuroscience at this point. And so I'd really like to kind of transition. And so, what would someone like me do in my position? Or maybe there's others like that too. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. If anyone else would like to share, and specifically if you think you have a more unique background, since that is very common in data science is what I'll say, but I'll definitely talk about it more in a bit as well.
Well, I would like to go next if that's okay. My name is Mohammed. I graduated this May with a degree in computer science from Prairie View A&M University. It's a sister school of Texas A&M. And my department chair, he forwarded us the email for the Datathon. He said, if you're in school or just graduated, something you should look into. And data science is not something that I have a lot of knowledge in, because a lot of my experience in my internships was mostly on Power Automate, Mendix, low-code development. So this is something I realize is a gap in my knowledge, and I just want just here today to learn, to see what I could pick up and how I could leverage it, because I'm also looking for work right now. So 50% of my time, I'm either looking for work, applying for positions, or I'm on LinkedIn Learning, or I'm Coursera taking courses.
Awesome, that's great.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm a sophomore undergrad student at Texas A&M. I'm a rising junior. Right now, I'm actually doing research with one of the professors at Texas A&M. My job particularly is about data analytics, and I'm just learning data analytics. We're using PostgreSQL to kind of exploring the data, and we build like a racial database for our research. I'm just here to learn, to explore more about data science. And by the way, I'm a computer science major. Data science is always one of my interests, so that's why I'm here today.
Awesome, thank you.
Can I go next?
I'll hit it after you.
Nice. All right, sounds good. So I'm also a computer science major. I'm actually a sophomore at BSU. And I don't know if anything really makes me unique other than the fact that I feel like data science combined with machine learning is extremely powerful.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm Justin. I'm a rising sophomore at Texas A&M, but I'm actually from Pittsburgh, and I'm in Pittsburgh right now, so Carnegie Mellon, nice. I'm just like I'm a normal computer science major, and I'm still trying to figure everything out, learning on my own, like getting into data science and getting into machine learning, just reading on my own. And I kind of went into this because I'm trying to figure out, I'm not the person that's been doing coding for like their entire life and knows all about like GitHub and all kinds of things to put on your resume for these kinds of things. Like it's still really new to me. So that's why I'm in here.
Awesome.
Can I go next?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Angel. I feel like I relate to Justin's situation a lot. I'm also a rising sophomore at Texas A&M University, and I guess I was just really interested in learning more about data science. And one of the things I feel that sets me apart is I'm trying to apply for an accelerated Master's of Finance program, and I heard that one of the ways that business and engineering can be integrated while still retaining a lot of technical skills and background is through data science. So I was hoping to learn more about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the big reasons I was attracted to data science as well, is because I knew I have this technical background and love using those skills, but combining that with product sense and seeing how your work can actually impact a product decisions and make a business impact is really exciting. So that's good. Anyone else would like to share?
I can go real quick.
Awesome.
So forgive me, I don't have a webcam. I'm old school, but my name is John Schwenk. I'm a Master of Science in Statistics at Texas A&M. And my question has kind of to do with, I guess, the job descriptions that I've been seeing. Like I know at a lot more of the data science roles, there a lot recently I've noticed that they're looking for PhD in either computer science, statistics, or math. But like you were kind of saying when you introduced the webinars, that different companies have different expectations. So I was just kind of wondering if, since you work at Facebook, if you could kind of elaborate on like why specifically do they need PhDs, and if that is kind of like a precluding factor or not, since I'm going for master's.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I feel like one thing I should note right now is I do work for Facebook, but all of these are my own opinions. They don't represent the companies, and it's also just been my own experience. So just take that in mind with everything I say. But that's a great question. So we'll touch on that.
Could I add
Good.
on?
Sorry. Do you want to go ahead?
You said something about a PhD, the requirement being a PhD. So I wanted, if it was okay for you to cover. I'm an undergraduate. I just finished my freshman year. So if you could talk about data science internships for undergraduates and like how to be more competitive for them.
Yeah, I can try.
I could go next. I do not come from a computer science background. I'm very technical. I got my PhD in chemical engineering and I started working a year and a half ago. I work in the oil and gas industry, but some of my research from PhD is both chemical, oil and gas, and also subsets with biotechnology and biochemical engineering. I just started doing the data science Harvard Extension course online. And I've been drawn towards data science because that's like the next big thing everyone's talking about. So if you could share some insights about someone who wants to get into this field but is not from computer science background.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi Isha, I can go next. My name is Yamini. I am a master's in statistics graduate from San Diego State, and I am currently in the job process, and I've been seeing that every new day there's something new with the softwares that's coming up. So I wanted to know how companies are adapting to that when they do hire graduates fresh out of colleges. And also the interview process, maybe you want to share something that you've gone through, because right now when I look at them asking me, there are long interviews such as 4 hours of interviews or 5 hours. So what can I expect out of those interviews, as they would be my first interviews?
Absolutely. And could you just repeat the first part of the question about software and?
Yeah, so I see a lot of software. Everything has Python is coming up with new packages, or R or SAS. So I want to see how companies are adapting to that. Do they want someone who's very resilient to those packages, or they want someone who they can still teach these packages to, as every day there's something new in the field of data science, machine learning.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Hello. Is it okay if I go next?
Yes.
My name is Carlos, and I'm a student at University of the People, so I take classes fully online. I'm pursuing a computer science degree, bachelor's computer science degree, and at first I was interested in software development, but I've recently started getting more into data science and machine learning. But one of the things that I sort of started wondering now is like, what is sort of the best language to learn or the best technology to use in data science to be more employable? One of my professors told me to look into SAS and SPSS, but I see a lot of people talking about R and Python. Mainly I use Python and R for my projects and everything. So.
Okay, great question, thank you.
I can go next. First of all, thank you for taking time to host this webinar, Isha. I mean, on a beautiful Saturday day. So my name is Akshit, and I'm a Management Information Systems graduate student at A&M. And I have a question similar to Carlos. I mean, like he said, that what is the skill that is required, or what is the basic skill that is required to get through this, to get into this industry? I mean, out there are a lot of things, and everybody says something different. People say, oh, Python is very important, but Python is not just Python. There's a lot to it. Some people say SQL is important, but then SQL again has its so many applications. People say machine learning is important, but machine learning is itself like so complex. What are you talking about? Logistic regression, random forest. What is this? So like, it's very intimidating. Like you started the webinar saying that there's a lot of things out there. So we need just a little bit of like clear guideline. Okay, these are the basic things that you want to know if you want to break into this industry. So I think that would be a great start for me. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's honestly a great question. And like I said, it's something I've really been trying to figure out myself as well. I was actually studying mechanical engineering my first 2 years at Carnegie Mellon when I realized those weren't the skills I wanted to use on a daily basis. And so even discovering what data science is, how to break into the industry, is something I've really been trying to figure out. So I'll share what I have learned, but I can tell you it's still not going to be that simple. But I can at least definitely explain what my experience has been so far. And so we've done about 15 minutes of introductions. I think I'm going to start jumping into talking about my own experiences, and then we will definitely leave more time for questions. And if I didn't touch on something that you brought up, or if you just wanted to send something in the chat, please feel free to, since I'm just going to try and compile all my thoughts right now. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with talking about, a lot of people talked about what skills are required to break into this industry. So for that, I think I'm just going to talk about the types of interviews that I've experienced so far as a data scientist. So I kind of made my own little notes so you can't even see, but I broke it up into case interviews, tech interviews, and then statistics and machine learning basics. So for the first section, for case interviews, I think this is the most oversought type of interview for data scientists. Is not even really as technical, but more about how to interpret data, how to use it in projects, and how to take your impact and make it into a business takeaway. So a very common type of interview will be, tell me about your past projects. Interviewers will really drill deep into what data did you use, what problems did you have as you were doing your analysis, what mistakes did you make, and how did that have an impact. They're going to be looking at, if you're given a data set, what projects would you complete on this data set? What other data sets would you want that would help you get to some conclusions? What are examples of insights you could make? And what would the hypotheses be for those insights in order to make a business impact? Lastly, for product interpretation in general, how to quantify trade-offs in metrics for your project. So this idea of trade-offs in metrics is, for example, I work for Facebook. So if you create a new product that is causing more types of one engagement, such as likes, are you going to have a trade-off in the amount of another type of metric, such as comments? So I'm starting off with this because I think this is, like I said, what people tend to skip over when they're interviewing the most, is really understanding the product that your analysis is going to help. Because at the end of the day, as technical or as accurate or as interesting as your analysis is, what only thing that matters is how it impacts the business and whether others can understand it, and whether you have an analytical mind to ask the right questions from your data set you have. So for another example is, if you are given an analysis where you see some parts of the country are using your product more than others, think to yourself, well, what other data sets would I want to have right now in order to complete this project? What are some example hypotheses I can make, such as, this country is using our product more because the literacy rates are higher. Having clear hypotheses and showing that you have the mindset to think creatively about your data set and what you can take out of it is, I think, really, really important, and what a lot of people miss when studying for interviews. Designing experiments and interpreting results. So this is another thing that's really important. Once again, like after you've learned your analysis, and we'll talk about that afterwards too. After you've learned the statistical part of your analysis and coding, it's what you really need to know too is how to design an entire experiment, which is why I think this hackathon will be really useful too. But designing experiment from what will we want to test, so that when we have our results, we'll be able to create some sort of conclusion from it, and how would we interpret those results. And similarly, lastly, is decision-making via metrics. So what is the threshold for the results of your metrics that will allow you to make some sort of change? So yeah, that was a lot of rambling, but I feel like it's important to note, like I said, that data science goes way beyond the actual analytics, but it's really about what the impact of your work is. And it is so difficult to find the impact of your work if you're not planning it out from the beginning, which is why they really want to be able to test your quick thinking of, here's a data set, what can you even find from this, like creative ideas that will help their own company, for example. So those case type questions will always be a part of most interview processes. If anyone has any questions about the case type interviews, feel free to pop them in the chat. And then I'll move on to, now we'll have more of the tech interviews. So tech is, to me, like coding type interviews. And this is also going to be confusing, since if you were interviewing for multiple companies, you're going to have many, many different types of tech interviews to study for. So the number one biggest one to me that I actually do think is a baseline for getting into data science is SQL. and querying. I think not only do they want to make sure you can use SQL, because most companies will need you to be pulling data sets at all times. And unfortunately, a lot of part of being a data scientist is pulling numbers for people really easily. But I do also think that showing fluency in SQL shows that you really understand how data structures work. You understand what's possible for combining data, the types of questions they'll ask in their interview, such as if you have multiple tables, give me a summary statistics based on what we're giving. I think those do really indicate showing a strong fluency in data. SQL and querying is definitely important for interviews, unfortunately. And even if you don't end up using it in your job, or even if if they don't even ask too many direct SQL questions, I think even the act of studying everything in SQL just really gets you into the right mindset. There are tons of SQL courses online that I have found through Reddit, actually. I found has been a pretty good resource for finding the best links. And LeetCode also has some SQL questions. But yeah, that's the first thing I would study for tech. So then the next part of some tech interviews is actually pretty similar to SWE interviews, and that's just general Python or language of choice data structures questions. So this is something that always kind of surprised me when I was first doing data science interviews, that they wanted me to do kind of the is prime or make a list of this factorial, I don't know, the basic LeetCode type questions. There will be many companies that ask you that. And it's just, once again, to show your quick problem solving skills, and also kind of, they want to vet that you should be able to code kind of comfortably before diving into deeper analysis. And yeah, I've also had companies, usually Python is the simplest for that, but companies will also let you do those types in a language of your choice, such as R. Yeah, and then lastly for tech is analytics in Python and R, Python using pandas data frames. And once again, all of these interviews are just by company to company, but these are what I would be prepared for. But simple questions in Python pandas, such as add a new column to this data frame, or same thing in R, transform this only for these conditions, and being familiar with all of that. I guess to go over it more too, for SQL, Python, R, it's usually more simple things like knowing things like groups, windows, functions, looking at example problems. And then my last tip is for all tech interviews, it's really important to be able to talk out your problem solving as you go, which is a very, very difficult step, but I think it's critical. A big part of your job will be explaining non-technical concepts to non-technical people. So even explaining to your recruiter how you got to the conclusion, or you got to your final solution, is really important. And also it shows a level of intelligence of understanding what your actual solution is, and showing your process of getting there is really important. A tip I always like to do is, after I'm given the problem, I will even narrate that I'm about to narrate my thoughts, for example. So I will say oh, well, I'm gonna just take a minute to think about my high level approach. I want to, at the end of the day, I need to get the sum of how much each user spends, which means I'm gonna have to do a group by here, but then afterwards I'm gonna need to combine it with this. And so showing them that you have a way to get to your solution is really important. Other just general tech tips when you interview are, as you're going, if you sense you're making a mistake, call it out. I think it's very impressive when somebody who's interviewing says, oh, well, I know this isn't going to take into account any of these edge cases. It just shows that you're still thinking about your data as you go. And otherwise for tech, this is all I had written down. But yeah, oh, and then I didn't touch about machine learning, but my third section is statistics and machine learning core concepts. So this is the section I've had the least interview practice in, and I do think that's because they don't usually ask too much about statistics or machine learning concepts, actually, because the only way they can really test about that is your broad understanding, but they would rather see applicable skills, if that makes sense. So for statistics and machine learning interview practice, I would look at basic probability questions, such as ones you would find for trading interviews and finance interviews as well. Things like, if you were to flip a coin 20 times, what's the probability that 10 times would be heads? So like binomial distributions, and just in general, having a good understanding of like sample sizes and how to prove that something is statistically significant. Next would be like having a basic understanding of all the statistical tests and when you use each one. Like linear and logistic regression end up being your best friend when you're a data scientist. So being really familiar about how those work and why you use them. And lastly, just a lot of basic ML principles, like just understanding what they are and ways you could use them in practice is a good idea. Things that I've done in the past is I've actually just made myself little like study guides, just like tests. So I will take this format of like case questions, tech questions, stats ML questions, and for each one, write bullet points of everything I need to study and then write examples of those. And I find that if I make myself a study guide and like in words, use actual words to describe each of those concepts, it kind of helps me when the actual interview comes because I've already kind of explained some of those topics. Okay, gonna read some of the questions that were sent. So level of math and statistics that's expected. This is something that's going to vary very, very much by position to position. So a couple of you are PhD students, and a couple of you mentioned that a lot of job role descriptions will mention that they have a PhD requirement. Just to preface this, in my mind, when they say there's a PhD requirement, they usually will only accept PhD candidates, or if you've had many, many years of experience of equivalence. But for entry-level positions, it's not something that they will accept. You can always apply. There's not too much of a harm, but I wouldn't, those shouldn't be the types of positions you're looking for anyways. Otherwise, the level of math statistics expected is not too much. I think that I don't know how to exactly quantify it, but any like basic statistics undergraduate degree or for the computer science majors, just taking like the first 2 or 3 levels of statistics class should be enough. I think that knowing how to apply the statistics model like concepts is much more important, and understanding the results of statistical tests and also just having practice writing those analyses, I think that's more important. So yeah, if one thing I keep repeating is that it really just more matters how you can apply your learnings. That's what I would repeat. Comment on doing projects versus taking Coursera classes for learning skills. Okay, so this is just going to be my own opinion. The only projects I've done have actually been most of the projects I've done have been ones I've done for classes in schools. And I have taken some Coursera classes, but I didn't find them too helpful. I think that you need both. You need both. If you were serious about trying to break into the data science field, you need to first take Coursera classes and any sort of online classes in order to get like an overall summary of everything that's kind of expected as a data scientist. And even though those classes can be a little bit slow and you might not feel like you've learned too much at the end, that's where I think doing a project after you take one of those classes is really, really key. And when you do projects, I think if you're going to be doing personal projects, it's important to make sure you have all 3 parts of a project really covered. So like the case parts, like really summarizing in your final analysis why you did this analysis, what the impact was, how like drawing up a really, really good story about your presentation, and should come to our later talk today, storytelling with data, to learn how to do that. But yeah, making sure if you do your own projects, you have the case part really well done, you have your tech part really well organized too on GitHub or in a notebook, and you have the like math, statistics, and machine learning parts, like you show clear use of and like clear fluency of those topics. That's an example of a good project. So yeah, my recommendation would be to do a Coursera class, but then also do your own project afterwards, and don't skip anything, and make sure it looks really well packaged. Okay. Any good resources or methods you recommend to study for case interviews? Yeah, so I haven't really found any. Or actually, I guess so what I did for Facebook and for some of my other companies that I was interviewing for was I actually like looked at the company I was like helping, or so if you were to do a project, look at whoever you want to help at the end of the day, and actually write down some of the products I use. So for Facebook, I wrote down newsfeed, videos, events, messenger, like write down every single project they have in a bullet point, and then for each of those brainstorm, how could data help make the product better? Like that's at the end of the day, what every company wants you to do. Like they're collecting lots of data, they want to give it to you, and they want you to make their company better with that data. So I think that, yeah, good case practice is brainstorm out each of the products, brainstorm how could data make this better, write out which data sets you would need and what sort of actual metrics you would find from those data sets, such as average spent per customer over this amount of time versus this amount of time. So don't actually need to calculate anything, but write out what the specific numbers would be, and then write out how your findings would help the company and how they would use your findings to make decisions. I think that's the best resource I have, is like your own sort of, like just doing it yourself. I'm trying to think if there's any other better resource for case type interviews. I think the best resource again would be to actually write up your project very well. So rather like have some sort of final product that you create, even post about on Medium or on GitHub, and make it look very like a full final project. Okay. Do we need to know both Python and R? Is one preferred over the other? And any recommendations for someone starting out? So good question. Yeah, so a lot of people had asked about like what technologies you actually need to know. The general consensus I found at data science in companies is that people are usually pretty flexible of how you want to do your analysis, and more matters what your final output is and what impact it has. And this is not true for every company, but it is true for most of them. So I haven't found a preference between Python and R. It's really just whatever you feel more comfortable with. I will say that R is more highly regarded in more like statistics heavy jobs and more technical jobs, because the capabilities and all the testing is just so much better and so much easier. And it's also much more clear than Python and Pandas. But there's a lot of cool visualizations you can do with Python and Matplotlib and instead. So I don't think one's preferred over the other. Recommendations for someone starting out is actually to learn both. I would learn Python just in the general sense, just to learn about coding, and those will be skills like that you use even if you're not actually coding, but just the problem solving skills you will use. And then also make sure you learn R just to learn the capabilities of analysis and interpreting the results there. Yeah, I would suggest both. Yes, yeah, okay. In the interview, do we need to code using a computer? Yeah. So it depends on the company. Once again, I don't think there are going to be a lot of in-person interviews for a while. Some in-person interviews I've had have been whiteboarding and writing out the code like word for word just on a whiteboard. Other interviews I've had are CoderPad, where you share your screen and get to like actually your interviewer will see what you're typing. And some of them will let you run your code, and some of them won't let you run your code. So yeah, be prepared for all of those, but be prepared to actually write real code, and be prepared to debug that code, even if it's SQL, like make sure you know what's going wrong. It's a little loud outside. There's some protests going on, so hopefully everyone can still hear me. Can you provide some resume tips? And to get an interview, you need an impressive resume. So what would you look for in a resume for an entry-level data scientist? Okay, awesome. That leads me to my next little notes page about LinkedIn and resume tips. So yeah, I think whoever asked this question is completely correct that resumes are a really, really key part to getting into any company. So I'm just going to spill a lot of the thoughts that I had written down about resumes, and we can take it from there. So yeah, so having a really clean, professional looking resume, like your actual first impressions of it are very, very important. Making sure that the bullet points in each of your projects are starting with an ED verb, so completed, created, and analyzed, like, and making it very consistent with each one. So yeah, so all these beginning tips are just like, all these are basics that you need to make sure your resume looks very, very professional, because otherwise someone will look at it and just not take you seriously. How to stand out. So I think that it's really important to not only, you definitely have to both first establish your like technical base and your technical skills. Through this, it's going to come through your education. It's going to come through your skills section, listing out everything you know. It's going to come through your past work experience, and it's going to come through your projects. For past work experience and projects, my biggest tip is for anything that you're mentioning, make sure you're putting your best foot forward by making it sound as technical and deep as you can, and don't include any experience that isn't as technical. So if you did a really, really small project for your part of your internship, I would think it's better to just include one really, really deep point than to like kind of dilute your work with many, many projects. And additionally, if you do have many projects, if you can create some sort of variety in them and the types of skills you use. So on my resume right now, I have one project where I use natural language processing libraries in Python to do some analysis on like Wikipedia question generating and answering. And then I have another project that's creating a recommendation system using machine learning for Netflix principles. So in all your projects, you want to show that you can do a wide variety of skills. And so I think it's better to make sure you're doing that. I think another thing about resumes in general is that I think it's really cool if your resume itself can tell a story. So this kind of reminds me of like applying to colleges, how you wanted to make sure your Common App showed an entire story of who you are, what your passions are, and how you've gone after them. I think resumes should do something similar in a way. So to me, this means having like a lot of projects or projects or experience that have like a theme of sorts. Such as if you have an interest in education, if you have like 2 things on your resume, like one project of teaching and education and one work experience working in education, like I think it shows that there's a consistency to what your interests are. Lastly, for resumes, I'm not sure what other like general tips to give. I was going to plug this at the end, but I do a lot of like resume help on free for people all the time. So I will be like giving out my information, and I actually genuinely encourage anybody who's here, especially since there's only about 50 of you, to send me your resume and send me like a bullet point of something you want to leave, and I would be happy to give more tailored advice. Other things I wrote for LinkedIn and resume in general is, so for LinkedIn, do keep your LinkedIn updated. It is a really great way to be reached out to from recruiters. So especially your skills section and then your project section. And in your projects, and this applies a little bit to resumes too, but make sure you do have all the buzzwords and all the names of the technologies you're using. A lot of recruiting is done through computers, and they're literally just going to flag if they see the certain buzzwords they need. And a trick for this too is if you actually go to the description of some jobs you're interested in and make sure like a lot of the words kind of match up, since sometimes they're literally just gonna put it through and see how closely related the description is to your resume. I've heard of people doing sneaky things too, is like putting some buzzwords in white font on the resume, but a lot of it is just, it's a big game. So there's definitely, there's sneaky things you can do, but making sure your skills align, looking at the description is a really good way to do that. Another thing for LinkedIn is if people do summaries, I think it's important to make sure your summary is professional and not cringy in any way. A lot of people are trying to break into this field, and from your summary should show that you were already like qualified for the field. It shouldn't show that you are trying to I've just noticed that when people have summaries saying that they like want to learn more and they want to try and break in, it's less impressive than saying like I have experience and am looking for opportunities in the data science field. So make sure your summary is like very professional and not cringy in any sort of way, because that is the first thing that recruiters are going to see. And if it shows a lot of confidence, then recruiters are going to keep looking at the rest of your profile. And lastly, for LinkedIn, cold calling and messaging random people. So this is a strategy that can actually work. I have a lot of friends who have ended up just messaging a lot of Amazon employees and then eventually finding an Amazon employee happy to give them a referral. So this does work, but I think there's ways you can do this to make sure you're respecting the person you're messaging's time. So one is have a clear motive in your message. I think that when people ask, oh, I'd love to hear more about your experience, or I would love to like see advice you have for me, that's too general. You don't want to waste the other person's time, and you want to show that you respect them enough to have a clear motive for reaching out to them. So motives such as, I have a couple questions and would love to talk on the phone, or if you prefer email with my questions, or I saw you have a unique background. I also have a unique background, so I'd love to learn more about how that unique background like affected your data science career. Or I'm really interested in this company and I plan to apply, but was hoping to get a referral for more. Like I could, if you're interested in me giving you more about my background, I'd love to, but like, please let me know if this is something you're capable of. So I really do think having some sort of clear motive, and even if that motive is just to talk and learn about their experience, but like just writing it out very clearly will increase your rate of response, and also following up. So if you send one message once, if you follow up one more time, everyone is much more likely to open that first message and respond. So something like, and you can make up little excuses to follow up, such as like, just want to follow up. I had a new success this week and thought that it could be helpful for a conversation, or just wanted to follow up that I participated in a Datathon bootcamp this weekend and it had me thinking about this. I'd love to ask you more about it. Finding any little excuse to follow up, but keeping it very respectful. And okay, lastly, I wrote, or let me read a couple more questions. Okay. Would you please give some recommendations on data structure and algorithm resources? It's a great question. My data structures and algorithms class at Carnegie Mellon was like one of my favorite things in the world. And the curriculum is online. It's called 15112 at Carnegie Mellon, and the curriculum is very, very good. It's in Python, and it has a really good summary of data structures, example quizzes, and everything. So I would check that out. I think that even when trying to review for resources, that's been my favorite thing to go back to. Should we host side projects on our GitHubs? Yes. If you were doing side projects, and like I was talking about earlier, like I think really like making the technical side of it really professional and wrapped up is good practice and great to be referenced to, and also good networking if anyone reaches out to you. And then if you're hosting your side projects on your GitHubs, I also recommend that you host the analysis part of it and like the research design part of it in your GitHub as well. It's not only about the code. Could you please share any resources or links for CaseQ and TechQ? How about Glassdoor? I'm not sure what CaseQ and TechQ are. Case questions and tech questions. How about Glassdoor? Yeah, Glassdoor is always a good way to get a sense of an interview you're that's coming up. Case questions wise, Glassdoor can also just give you insights more into how the company uses data to make any improvements. So I definitely would recommend Glassdoor. Don't take it too seriously with the reviews of working at the company, but you can just get insight into the types of problems it would solve with data.
Hey, Isha, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to point out that it's 2:45, so we have about 5 more minutes to finish whatever talk you had. And I mean, you're already doing question and answers, but we'll open it up to more question and answers at that point. So
awesome, cool. So I'm going to keep going through these questions and then talk about 2 more points, and then hopefully get some more questions in. What are a couple of beginner-friendly projects to show we could work on to gain experience to show off to recruiters? Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had more examples right off the bat. One example I recently did was looking at voting registration data and census data. So for each state, census data is available online, voter registration data is available online, and looking at finding patterns in states and counties, looking for reasons this might be, making recommendations to a campaign for where they should target voter practices. I like this example project because the data is already all free and it shows interest in like current politics, and just it shows community interest, which I think is also a really good skill to show on your resume. Next is any tips on hour-long interviews? Yeah, interviews are exhausting. Have water by you, narrate your thoughts. Even if you're getting a little spacey, if you're getting a little bit tired, I've definitely sent interviews after like rambling. And I've even said it during here, like, oh, I'm sorry, I rambled a little bit. And like kind of get back on track. I think showing that self-awareness is really impressive. Otherwise, for hour-long interviews, yeah, I just gotta stay awake and make sure you practice, like make sure you feel really confident going into your interviews. Find your study guides and like review your study guides in between your hour-long interviews. And I always like to review my resume too. One tip that I've always told people for interview prep is if you're like giving your resume, you should be able to tell me like 2 different stories about each bullet point on your resume, like out loud. Do you find yourself using lower level languages at all, such as C, C++? The first example that comes to mind is some sort of MCMC algorithm for Bayesian model, for example. No, I personally don't. I do think that there are data scientists out there that do, but you don't usually need to. And like I said, usually you're able to use whatever language will provide the best analysis. Can we send over resumes for critique over email or Slack? Email. So I'll just change my username right now to my email. And if you are sending me your resume for critique, a bullet point about something specific to look at would also be really helpful, just so I can make, just in case I can't get to all of them, the whole resume. And that's also a good trick for if you ever do reach out to anyone for help, always have like a very specific ask, and it just makes everyone's job easier. Should I add data science as my second major to my computer science as an undergraduate? Is that something that would be useful as compared to just taking Coursera classes? Yes, I would think it's definitely useful to have your like actual undergraduate classwork and degree reflect data science. I think that it looks better at first than Coursera classes. Not to say that getting into Coursera classes can help you break into the field as well, but I do think the fact that my major, for example, was statistics and machine learning gave a really clear idea to recruiters. Okay, 2 minutes, gonna quickly go over reaching out to companies and how to stand out to companies. So Twitter is actually just gonna be my like big tip that was unexpected to me, but Twitter on tech is huge, mostly if you're trying to reach professors and their research, if you're trying to reach startup founders, data scientists in that. People really connect through Twitter, they share analysis through Twitter, and it's a really good way to kind of get your name in people's minds. I will find startups that I'm really interested in. I will follow all their data scientists on Twitter, and I'll just kind of keep in touch with what they want. And then the other great thing is that they'll usually post about talks that they're completing or projects that they're working on. So then if you ever do get in contact with them, showing that interest is really, really helpful. AngelList is for startups as well, and then LinkedIn, and like I said, Reddit. I think that even if there isn't a lot of helpful information out there, just kind of keeping in touch as to what people are talking about can be very, very helpful. And lastly, Facebook groups for diversity, like Facebook groups for like smaller diversity groups. So there's a great like women in data science groups, ladies storm hackathons. I know that I'm part of one for like Indian folks. So I think that finding like smaller Facebook groups can also be really helpful. And not saying that there's always great information there, but just staying in the community and keeping it on your mind, I think is awesome. And lastly, yeah, like for taking notes on every company you talk to, like if I found my notebook from when I was interview prepping, and for each company I talked to, I wrote a lot about what their products are, what their core values are, and I connected it to one of my own interests. I think all these soft skills are really underestimated and really important for interviews. And especially in data science, because after you've done your analysis, it's, like I said, only important if it's applicable. So yeah, I think that gets me to 50 minutes.
Thanks so much, Isha. No, I really appreciate that. And we're not done yet. So I'm gonna send at this point a link in the chat. And as you know, this is a boot camp that helps prepare people for the Datathon. So we really want to continue to improve this class and other classes. So that link should take you about 3 minutes. It's a survey for you to just comment on this class and how we can improve it. So we're going to take about 3 minutes of silence and then spend the rest of the time on question and answers. So during that time, if you think of a question, you can post it in the chat, but we're just going to there'll be no spoken questions for about the next 3 minutes. And about at 2:54, we'll come back and Isha will answer maybe 2 or 3 more questions. And as you know, you can reach out to Isha as well if you don't get your question answered. Okay, thanks. So the link's in the chat. Okay, it's 2:54. Thanks everyone for filling that out. We have time for about 2 more questions. I'm gonna have to cut us off at 2:57 so I can start the next class, which is getting started in data science, a technical class. So I know we're probably not gonna be able to answer all of them, but you can reach out to Isha afterwards. So there's a question on the Slack channel, Isha. And it says, "Hi, Isha, would you please tell me again about the data structure resource you've mentioned during the Zoom session?"
Yeah, absolutely. So I was referencing 15112. That's the course number. It's the Introduction to Data Structures course at Carnegie Mellon, and the syllabus is all online. And I believe if you just search 15112 CMU, it should come up. But the part of that online resource I would use is looking at the schedule, where it'll say for each week the content for that week, and they also have some quizzes and everything. I feel like it's a really good resource, and then there's also videos for how to go over everything.
Thanks. Yeah, and I wanted to put a quick plug in at this moment that TAMU Datathon is a Facebook page, because Isha was talking about all those Reddit and Twitter and everything. And we really exist throughout the year. We monitor that. And so if you're trying to get a job in data science, we have resources to people like Isha and many other data scientists that are out there that would love to talk to you. We can share resources. So we really want to be a hub. Reach out to us on Facebook too if you're looking for more prolonged experience. Okay, well, the next question is I'm sorry, I'm just trying to go back to, there's been a lot of questions, so I don't know if we'll be able to get to all of them, but I'm just gonna read the last one. It says, "I have the same question. As a new graduate without any industry experience, what kind of job roles should be targeted?"
Yeah, that's a good question. You don't have any industry experience already, you're still able to target the data scientist, data analyst, product analyst, data engineer type roles. A lot of them will overlap kind of based on the company as well. And I do think, so those are the job roles you want to target. But I do think that making sure your resume is in the right place before you target them is really, really important. So this is like we talk about side projects, but having really well documented side projects with published analyses. This could also mean for a lot of people is if you're still in university and you do software engineering internships or product management internships or any internship where you do a data science-y project at that internship, that could also be okay. I spent a summer working as a software engineering intern at Johnson & Johnson, but my project was more about doing analysis on the capacity of different servers that they use. So that could also be a way to break into data science, is doing like a software engineering internship or data engineering internship or product management internship, anything that you could actually maybe even do a data science project there. And that's something also you can talk to your manager about, saying, I'm really interested in software engineering, but like if there are any opportunities to learn more about data science this summer. And I actually just like started my own project on the side within the company and proposed the project. So that's also something you're able to do. Yeah.
Thanks, Isha. And unfortunately, I think for everyone, I think we could go on for 2 hours. I mean, you just have so much knowledge and there's definitely a lot of questions in this area. So I'm going to have to close the talk off, which I'm sorry about. But thank you, everyone, for attending. And I hope you will continue with us for the next few hours. Isha does have another talk at 8 to 9 CST, which she'll talk about data science storytelling. And so that's really how you move past the technical skills and tell a story with your data, which is really what companies care about. So I also saved the chat. I know there's some questions there. And so I'll give that to Isha. No guarantee she'll get to all of them because she's a busy person. But there's also on the Slack channel under Ask Teacher channel, there's a specific thread for Isha. So if you want to ask her some questions there, that might be a good way to reach out to her. And of course, her email. Well, thanks so much, Isha. We really appreciate it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye, everyone.